chat box on the right side of the video. We have students with us today from Estacada, Oregon, and Klamath Falls, Hillsborough, thank you all so much for joining us today. Portland, Reedsport, hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual farm field trip. We are live today at Blooming Nursery in Cornelius, Oregon. My name is Bella, and I'm a student at Oregon State University, and I'll be the moderator today. Before we start our tour today, I wanted to go over a few logistics to make sure we have a great experience. We've muted everyone, and everyone will remain muted throughout the tour so everyone can hear our tour guide clearly. If you do have questions, you can send them to us using the chat feature. Please only type your questions in the chat so that we can make sure we get to as many of them as possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce our host and tour guide for today's virtual field trip, Grace Dinsdale, founder and manager of Blooming Nursery. Take it away, Grace.
Good morning, everybody. So glad you could join us. It's an absolutely beautiful day today. I do have a mask and we are socially distanced. I'm just not wearing it because you probably wouldn't be able to understand what I'm saying. I have a very thick mask. Hopefully you all do too. So this nursery, I started it 40 years ago when I was 24, and it has been very successful. I was very lucky when I started it to find a group of plants that were not being grown for the industry at a time when the demand was rising for them. And those are hardy perennials. Perennials are plants that come back every year when you plant them once, and some of them will live 50 or even 60 years, like Baptisia or false indigo. A lot of them will maybe only live 2 or 3 years. Some will live 10 or 15. So it's variable how long they live. But the point is, it's different from annuals, which have a complete life cycle every year, and they die at the end of the year, usually when the frost comes. So perennials, usually you plant them and then you take care of them, you cut them back, you weed them, but you don't have to replant them usually very often. So that's what we specialize in, although we also grow shrubs with flowers. We really specialize in flowering plants. So we mostly grow shrubs that flower. We grow a lot of herbs, grasses. Like I said, annuals, we grow some annual color like geraniums we're going to see in a little bit. But I wanted to start out by explaining a little bit about our production practices here and how we make plants. These are all in here, they're cuttings. We also do grow plants from seed, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. Hopefully you've all had a chance to plant a seed and grow some plants and see the miracle of seed germination. These are mostly grown vegetatively by cuttings. And so we will take pieces of mature plants, we'll stick them in the soil and they grow roots. And this is a beautiful liner or plug. We'll plant this into a gallon-sized pot, which is a good-sized pot, and it will grow and be ready to sell in this time of year, which is the fastest time of year for growth. It'll be ready to grow, ready to sell in probably 4 weeks. In the fall or the summer, this will take 8 or 9 weeks. So it's very different at different times of the year. But right now, everything wants to grow, including the weeds. As you might have noticed if you work in your home garden, this is the time when the weeds go crazy and you have to weed constantly. So this is the biggest work time of year for gardening. If you do your work now, you have a beautiful garden to relax in and enjoy with your family for the rest of the summer. Not that you don't have to do more work later, but it's not nearly as much as you do in the spring. So there's a number of things we do here. We're very environmentally aware. We have done a lot of things around the farm to try to take care of the ground. One of the things that we do is we try to use beneficial organisms, which are like if you have an aphid, you can get parasites that will attack those aphids. And if we can get these other bugs to grow that will feed on the aphids or feed on the whiteflies, whatever our problem is, if we can get populations of these other insects that like to eat the ones that damage the plants, we don't have to spray any chemicals on the plants. That's very important to us. And it's very important to most consumers at this point as people become more aware of the damage that we're doing to the earth. So this is an example right here. These are Stradiolepsis simitus. All of these predators have unpronounceable names, and I don't know them very well. We have someone else here who is more of an expert on that. But they're distributing these every week here to make sure we keep our populations up and keep our damaging insects down. Another thing we do is we really try to reduce our energy use. And one of the ways we do that is we have it's all natural ventilation here at this nursery. So most of our greenhouses, the roof opens, the sides open. We're able to get really good airflow without using electricity to run fans. A lot of nurseries have a lot of fans. They're using a lot of power to run those. And we really believe in more passive ventilation. So there's a number of things like that that you can do to reduce your impact and to have a more, I'm sure you've heard the word sustainable, but to have a more sustainable production practice. All agriculture has an impact on the earth. All agriculture does. So the trick is to try to make that as little as possible and to mitigate those or to try to make up for those effects that we have on the earth by taking care of as much of other things as we possibly can. So we've done a lot of replanting around the farm and trying to avoid also herbicide usage. So so I think we should move into another house. I want to also show an irrigation system that we don't use a lot of water because it's all recycled. So now we'll go ahead and walk through the greenhouse and go over to the other area.
Awesome. While we're walking, we have one question for you. So this question is from Mia, and she's wondering, how did you choose the name Blooming Nursery for your business?
Oh, that's a very good question. There was no other choice because we are located in a community called Blooming, believe it or not. And it's not, a lot of people don't even know that it's a community anymore. It used to have a post office, it had a school. It doesn't anymore, but it still has a sign that says Blooming. So, you know, I'm about half a mile from that sign. So when I started, I knew I wanted to grow flowers. It was a no-brainer to call it Blooming Nursery.
Wonderful. Another question is, how many plants do you have in total?
Oh, I wish I knew. It varies a lot. And let's walk on through this fog area because it's going to fog up the camera and you're not going to be able to see anymore. This, by the way, is a fog system that we use to propagate the plants. They need really good air moisture. So this is what we do to try to help them stay hydrated and not dry out before they can grow roots. So did I have a question, an active question?
I can ask you another one. Another question is, how many employees do you have working for you at the moment?
There's about 120 right now, and we fluctuate. In the winter, we go down to about 65. We also have a retail store, so about probably 12 or 14 of them are over there, and the rest are all here at the wholesale nursery. The retail nursery is about 15 minutes away from us, so it's just due north. So this house has a lot of features that work really well for us. One of them is the roofs. You'll notice that they're rolling up there because it's a warm day. They'll open all the way to the ridge line so that this house is, you can have it so it's virtually outside. The sidewalls also roll completely up. So it really can get good ventilation. So we also have, I mean, we grow a lot of lavender in here. Lavender really doesn't like wet leaves. I mean, right, those you can see they just got watered, but mostly we are watering from the bottom. And and we're going to show you that in just a minute, how that system works. So, and then on the other side, we have some color crops. Hey, Loreto, por favor. So we're going to start the irrigation here in just a minute, and then you'll be able to see how we irrigate these crops. But this is where we really like growing things in this house. We have all of this is concrete, but it has heat under it. So it really helps the plants to grow happily. They just grow really fast. They really like it in here. We still also have the ability to keep it cool on overhead because of all of the roll-up windows and roof. But also we're watering from below in here, and there are if there's holes in the middle of each of these sections that are about 2 feet apart or a foot apart right here. And when she turns, my friend Loreto here, she just went to start the irrigation. When that comes up, those holes go all the way down both beds here. And the middle is higher than the sides. So that water is going to start bubbling up through these holes, and it'll fill the whole bed and water everything at once. The great thing about that, any minute now, the great thing about that is it keeps the foliage dry, so we don't have as much disease on the plants, and it also waters it all at once, and so we save a lot of time that we don't have to be in there with a hose watering. And this is not happening, so oh, there it is, here it is. Okay. So it takes about 6 minutes to fill it and then to drain it. And there's we won't show you this, but there's a really high volume filter so that you'll see there's some kind of dirt and stuff on the floor. All of that will go back down into the drain holes when it gets done. And then it'll go back through this debris filter at high speed, and all of this, all the dirt and labels, anything that's on the floor will just kind of settle out so that we can keep the water clean. It goes back to a tank. So we're using the same water over and over. We just have to add more as the plants use it. So do we have some questions?
We sure do. So there's a question that's asking, what is the type of flowers that you have in the nursery?
We grow a tremendous number of varieties, probably more than just about any nursery I know. And it's because we love flowers so much that it's very hard to not grow things that are wonderful plants. But we probably grow about 2,200 different varieties. And I would guess that about 75% of those are hardy perennials, and the rest being grasses and annuals and herbs. So we only grow the annuals in the spring. We don't grow them the rest of the year. We grow the perennials and the grasses and the herbs all year round.
Another question is, do you remember the first plant you started growing?
Well, when I was young, I used to rescue plants that my mother had thrown away, house plants that she would throw away, and I would rescue those. And I made a shelf unit in my bedroom, and I tried to resuscitate those plants. So I had a lot of house plants, probably some pothos and some wandering Jew and some kind of regular house plants that weren't doing very well that I would try to kind of baby and bring back to life. And then pretty early I started helping with the family vegetable garden, and I love growing vegetables, love growing food. And so, we would always grow a lot of corn and a lot of carrots. I love garden carrots, beets, tomatoes, of course, are wonderful. I mean, all kinds of food. We used to grow a huge garden. Even now at the retail place, we grow a lot of produce, and we sell that out of our grocery store too. So we have a lot of interest in growing food, although here at the wholesale nursery, our specialty is really flowering plants.
Wonderful. Another question is, which flower takes the longest to grow before it is ready to sell?
Well, most of what we grow is ready in under 1 year. There are a few things that take 2 years. if, you know, we don't grow a lot of shrubs. Shrubs tend to take 2 to 5 years, depending on the size that you want it. But the things that we grow here that take a couple of years are things like, I don't know if you might be familiar with camas, but it's a native plant, a wild plant in the swampy areas. You'll see it's really pretty blue. It should be just starting to send up spikes and start to bloom pretty soon now. That's one that takes us about 3 or 4 years to grow. The epimediums also that's a ground cover with sort of like angel wing shaped leaves. So those two take about 3 years to grow. But like I said, most of what we grow is ready in under a year, and the annuals are ready in anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks generally. So these plants here, this is all osteospermum here, and they're in all kinds of beautiful colors. And these are ones we get in unrooted cuttings, you know, just the stem we'll get in from another nursery. Usually these will come from even South America or Central America. They grow a lot of that down there. They send them up to us in little bags, and we'll stick them. And then these are probably about, I would guess, from the time we get the cuttings to the time that they're ready to sell like they are now, it's probably about 8 or 9 weeks. Most perennials take longer though. So we'll do we'll grow a lot of perennials in the summer, and then we don't sell until the following spring.
Another question is, what is the difference between perennial and annual plants?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that is it's hard. Seems like it's hard for people to remember. We have a lot of customers that will come in and say, "I'm still confused. What's the difference?" So the difference is that annuals will go through their entire life cycle, from being a seedling all the way to flowering and dying in a single year. So the perennials, they sometimes take 2 or 3 years before they'll flower to get to the age where they flower. So they're spending that time bulking up, establishing their roots, building some kind of a base, and then they will start to flower. And then sometimes some of them, it takes a few years for them to really come into their own. Some things it'll take 5 to 8 years before it's real, and then they become these beautiful big bushes just full of flowers. Some things will do that in a single year, usually not that big, but you know, they'll still get some really good size in a single year. So perennials, a lot of times people will plant those in the fall to help them kind of get ahead, get established a little quicker, because of the fact that they're a little bit slower to come on, but when they do, they're just a magnificent show. Annuals, you really want to plant those in the spring.
Awesome. So if we want to move to our next location, if we're finished in this greenhouse, just in the interest of time,
okay.
I think we could go ahead and do that. And I just have one other question for you. Audrey's wondering what your favorite flower in the nursery is.
Well, that depends on what day you ask me. It changes constantly. So I'm sorry I can't give you a good answer, but it's kind of whatever plant I'm looking at becomes my favorite flower, which that doesn't sound like it means much, but that's not actually that uncommon for people that love flowers. It's just, you know, they're very electrifying, and I'm passionate about them. But if I could come up with my favorite flower today, which I will try to do, let me just think what it is. I love salvias. Salvias are a group of plants. They come in red and purple and pink and white and violet, and they tend to have really long blooming seasons. And the pollinators love them. I mean, bees and any kind. I mean, hummingbirds. Lots of butterflies, all of the pollinators love salvias. And salvias are anywhere from really short salvias to really tall salvias. I mean, there's some that are like 9 feet tall, and they'll have big red spikes of flowers. They're just magnificent. So I never get tired of salvias. We probably grow here, I would guess, about 40 varieties of salvias of different colors and sizes.
Okay, another question is from Levi. How long did it take to start your business?
Well, I started my business when I was 24, and I had just gotten married, and I was on my honeymoon, and I had a dream. I had a dream about this nursery. And I started it right away. So I came back home, I called my mother, I told her I had this idea. I asked her if it would be all right for me to rent some space here on the farm that was a junkyard at the time. If I cleaned it up, if I could use it. It was tiny. It was about just a quarter of an acre, which is not very big. It's about the size of this greenhouse, in fact. So it's not very much space. So she allowed me to clean all that up and then use that to start my nursery. And my nursery took off really pretty fast because of my choice of plant material. It was something that there was a big need for. So so I did we lose our audio? No.
Nope, you're good. So as we're walking to the next location, another question that we have is, what is the most unusual plant that you grow?
Well, unusual plants are in the eye of the beholder. One person's unusual plant that they're not familiar with is probably something that's very common to other people. So it's very subjective. But let me think about what that might be. Well, we grow a comfrey, a symphytum that's variegated, that has a gold variegation, and that's pretty unusual. It's hard to find. It's very slow to propagate. And so that's one. That's pretty unusual. It's got beautiful foliage. The flowers aren't very interesting. It has little tiny purple flowers, not nice at all, but the foliage, a lot of plants are grown just for their foliage, the leaves. So like hostas, you might be familiar with hostas. Those are generally grown for their leaves, and a lot of begonias, even though some of them have really beautiful flowers, a lot of them are grown just for the foliage because their leaves have a lot of silver, or they have a lot of sharp edges on them, or when people get interested in plants, anything that's a little different is interesting. Do you want to go that way or that way? Let's go this way. It might get better than the other one. Yeah.
Another question we have is, do you let bees or hummingbirds into the greenhouses to pollinate?
They come in naturally. Yeah, we have a lot of, sometimes we have swarms of bees here and we have to call a beekeeper to come get them, and that happens usually at least once every spring, actually. So we grow a lot of plants, a lot of flowering plants, so a lot of pollinators are attracted to the nursery. So, and we also have the passive ventilation with all the sidewalls and the roofs opening up. All of those, the insects and the birds, they do come in for sure. Yeah.
Another question is, why do you not water the plants from the top?
Well, we do water a lot of the plants from the top. It is, but there's certain things that we know we can do a lot better job with if we don't. They are things that tend to have disease if you water them from the top. Botrytis is something that gets in, like especially plants like lavender that have kind of fuzzy leaves. Those leaves, when they get wet, the water tends to kind of get trapped in there, and then that can really be a problem for those plants. And also the stem, as it comes out, if that stays wet, we tend to lose some of them. So if we water them from below, the stem stays dry, the foliage stays dry, and they just grow in a much more healthy way. It's also a lot faster to grow them with the flood from underground water, because as you saw, we can water a whole house in 6 minutes. If somebody's watering with a hose, it would take them an hour and a half. So we save a lot of time that way. This right here, I just want to show you, is a sweet potato vine. And these are, I'm sure if you've looked around at plants much, you'll have noticed these. They come in dark purple and red. I don't have a red one here, and then, well, there's some a little bit red, and then there's these gold ones. So we probably grow 6 or 7 varieties of these. And these are plants that people use in combination with other plants to give a cascading foliage look to complement the look of the flowers. So, but it's a sweet potato vine. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know that we've ever kept one long enough to grow sweet potatoes, or that they would, but same plant though.
Another question we have is from Abel, and they're wondering how many greenhouses do you have in total?
You know, that's a good question, but I don't actually know that number. We have there's about 150,000 square feet of space of heated greenhouse space. And that's about like 4 acres. If you know what an acre, how big an acre is 43,000 feet or so, square feet. So it's, you know, about 4 acres. We have a lot of that. That's our heated greenhouse space. We have a lot of this kind of space right here. These are cold frames. We just took the plastic off, but we grow all of our herbs in cold frames. They're outside, no heat. But we do some frost protection with that plastic, but we never heat them. And we love that kind of space. We have a lot of cold frame space, probably more than we have of heated greenhouse space. And then we also have outdoor open space, which we probably have the most of. We've probably got about 6 acres of open space that has no protection whatsoever. So in the winter, very few things will stay out in that kind of space. Most things will be in cold frames or they'll be in heated greenhouses. But we have a number of plants that'll do just fine outside. So we just have those outside. If it gets really severe, we'll throw some plastic over them. But most of the time, they're just out on their own over the winter.
Wonderful.
Sure.
Noelle wants to know if there's a plant that you would like to grow at your nursery that you don't have right now.
Well, that's an interesting question this year in particular, because there's a lot of plants that we had planned to grow that we were not able to get plant material, even though we had orders in advance. This has been a wild season. Last year was wild, and so was this one. And that's largely because of the virus and the fact that people have been home so much that a lot of people are gardening now that never did before. So that's really exciting for people to discover gardening. And there's a word for that I don't know if you all have been exposed to yet, but it's called biophilia. Biophilia is the natural tendency of humans to love nature and love biology, love life. So what they've found is when people have a chance to smell and touch dirt and to be exposed to plants and to touch them, that it has a physical effect on people, and that it's very, essentially everybody is susceptible to biophilia if they give it a chance, if they open their mind a little bit, they do a little gardening, and it does things for them that they didn't expect. So it's its own reward, and what we find is if people can get exposed to it, they tend to really get a lot out of it. And I think that's what happened last year, is a lot of people did get exposed because they did it. They were forced to be home. They didn't have a lot of other things to do. And they realized, this is really fun. This makes me feel really good. Plus, I'm creating a refuge at my home that's beautiful. I can go sit there, and it's really very pleasant. And so the more people do that, the more they want to garden. This has been an unexpected impact of the virus, that so many people have discovered gardening, and gardening has become a whole lot more popular than it was. It's exciting.
Another question we have is, where can customers find your plants as in the retail store?
Well, that's a really good question, and I will show you that right here. We sell to pretty much all of the independent garden centers in the Northwest, most of them, and we don't sell to any box stores like Home Depot or grocery stores or anybody like that. So it's just like garden stores, like all the local ones like Portland Nursery and Dennis's 7Ds and Gardener's Choice, and any of those kind of places, you'll find our plants. You'll find them, they're all in burgundy pots like I was showing you here. And some of them have, unfortunately I don't have any here, they have our logo on them. Any larger sizes, they're over in this next house. So if we're going to go up, we're going to try and get up to the order shed if we have time. 5 minutes.
We are out of time, unfortunately.
Okay, so anyway, we do have I'll at least show you a label. So our plants all have a custom made label like this, and they have little icons on the bottom to show the features of the plants. And so when you see that, and that's our logo right here. It's upside down. It's like that. Yeah, so that's our logo. And so on any bigger sizes, that's printed right on the side of the pot, so you can tell that they came from us. But like I said, they're all in that burgundy color, this color pot. And so you can find them there. And then also you can always come to our retail store at Blooming Junction, and we sell a ton of our stuff there too.
Wonderful. Our last question for today is what do you like best about your job? And is there anything else you'd like to share with the students who are watching today?
That is a tough question because I really love it. I don't know. I mean, I love working with the people and seeing people learn how to do new things. You know, the team that we have built here is really, really exciting and rewarding to work with them. I just love selling plants. I feel this way every spring. It's a very rewarding profession. The thing that's hard for a lot of people is how it's a lot of work, especially in the spring. There's no lie, it's a lot of work. But I've never felt like my work and my personal life are really separate. I really love this so much that it's what I would do when I got up in the morning, whether I had to work here or not. I hope
Wonderful.
that it makes sense.
Absolutely. So I just want to say thank you to Grace for sharing so much information about Blooming Nursery. We appreciate your time so much. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. We hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. This was a pleasure. Thanks.